Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Author's Best Friend Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and school is in session today with my new bestie, Kay Celeste. Kay, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a blackberry twisted tea today.
Twisted tea, yummy. And I've got a classic glass of red wine. So cheers. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Cheers.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me about your upcoming release. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on right now with that coming out in a little over a month. So you are a romance author who's releasing your first debut novel, Yes, Professor. That comes out on May 20th of this year. Yes, Professor is a dual point of view professor-student romance with, from my understanding, a wide open door.
Yes.
And honestly, the first question that's just really burning in my mind is there some dreamy professor out there that inspired your trope for this book?
Not a professor, but like my senior year of high school, there was a teacher. So a little bit, yeah.
Can we know what subject he taught?
English.
Oh, okay. So direct relationship here. Okay. And did this steamy English teacher also inspire like your writing?
I think I liked English has always been my favorite subject, like even back in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And then like my brother writes music. So I think it's a family thing. I'm not sure, but I've just always loved to write.
That's awesome. I definitely want to ask you more about that. But also I wanted to ask, so you had made like a joke on Instagram recently about like people asking you why you would write a taboo romance like as your debut novel. And I'm curious like how you decided to dive into like these specific tropes, like particularly this like teacher student and also like your age gap.
Me personally, I love to read a good like forbidden taboo romance. It's one of my favorite tropes. So and like I know there's like a community out there that loves to read stuff like that as well. So I was gonna write just a cutesy, like fluffy romance for my debut, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna write what I want to write in my heart. So I decided on taboo.
Was it like writing a book that you yourself would want to read? Or we were like, I've read a lot of these and I'm inspired by doing them, or like I've read a lot of these types of tropes and I want to do it better than the ones that I've read? Or
I think I'm definitely inspired by some of the ones that I've read, but also like it's just something that I myself would love to read if somebody else put out.
do you personally have any experience dating an older man?
Not much older. I think the max is like 6 years, so not that much older. But
Honestly, though, I feel like in your 20s, like a 21-year-old guy and a 27-year-old guy are from different planets. Like,
oh, for sure.
yeah, I feel like 6 years is a lot when you're like under 30. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Even over 30. 6 years is just a lot for guys. They mature so much. So how did you plan out your characters?
The female main character, Arya, she, like personality wise, and some of her interests are like little sprinkles of what I'm like and things that I like. But other than that, she's like, I want to say the opposite of me. Like she's so, like I like a good party sometimes, but she's a party girl. She's outgoing, flirty, and I'm just very much introverted. So I wanted to write somebody who was a little bit like me, but like I complete opposite.
Yeah. How do you find your inspiration for doing that? Like, is it like any choice I would make, Arya is going to make the opposite? Or like how do you write somebody that is completely different from yourself?
I do have some friends who have like the same personality as her. So like knowing them, for certain decisions that Arya has to make, I was like, okay, what would this friend do? What would that friend do? So they kind of inspired that.
I see. And then is Professor Graves more of like, well, they meet in Vegas, right? So he's also out, but is he like naturally more of like a homebody?
Yes, he's not really a partier much. He loves a good karaoke bar.
Oh, cute.
But other than that,
that's awesome. So how do you usually start? Like, okay, so did you have the characters first, or did you know like this is the trope that I want to write, and then I'm going to craft characters that I think that will like make this trope really fun, or like in the writing process, like where do you start?
I had the trope that I wanted to do first, and then I spent like 3-4 days on like different documents for both characters, like in detail, like down to birthday, star sign, all of that.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's actually really smart though, because I feel like if you're writing about somebody who's different from yourself, if you know like their zodiac sign and like all of these things that give you a sense of what their personality might be, it helps like to guide them along.
Yeah, definitely.
I also feel like it would be really hard to write an age gap like this if the personalities were reversed. Like if Professor Graves was like really outgoing and like saucy and confident, and Arya was like kind of more like reserved and quiet and whatever. It feels maybe like creepier if you do it that way. I feel like you have to make her being the one who's kind of like the temptress a little bit.
Yes, I don't think it would have worked out as well if the roles were reversed.
Yeah. Yeah. But even still, I feel like that, like you said, there is like a subgroup of people who are really into that type of trope. But I also think that like some of my favorite experiences reading are, I've talked about this kind of a lot, but I don't really read the backs of books, or I try not to read blurbs too much. Obviously, in like prepping for podcasts, I have to do a little bit of recon, but I try not to know too much about what's in the book because I know myself, and I've read some of my favorite books without actually really knowing what was going on in the book because I really like to be surprised. You might hear like, oh, this is a trope that I don't really like. But if you don't know the tropes that are in the book and then you go in and read it, I think some of my best reading experiences are like, you know, that's not a trope I usually go for, but I really enjoyed that. Like, I really liked that. You got me on the hook.
Yeah. And I definitely think there are some elements in Yes, Professor that are like, you wouldn't really expect to find in a taboo. So I think if somebody who doesn't like taboo or like Professor Student, if they picked it up, they would find some joy in it for sure.
Yeah, that I guess that's what I mean is like everybody has their own little rendition of it. I think it's fun to have tropes because it's like people have their favorites and you pick up books that like you kind of latch onto, but everybody kind of does it their own way, which is really cool. Okay, so Professor Graves is a romantic literature professor. Is that right?
Yes.
So like what does he cover specific books in his class?
Yes. And one of like this isn't really a spoiler, so I can say it. One of the first, his first class actually, like after he, his eyes go to Arya and he's like, oh, like that's the girl that I hooked up with. The lesson for that specific day is forbidden romance. So it's kind of right on the money.
Oh my God. Is it like a Romeo and Juliet type of thing that he's covering?
Yep.
Oh, gotcha. That's so cute. She's a freshman, right? She's a freshman year in college? Okay. And what's her major?
English.
English. Okay. Gotcha. Does he teach other classes or is this like their one chance a week to?
That's the one.
Wow. That's dangerous. Is his like class and formatting structured a little bit like your experience with your high school teacher, or is it model like your own personal college experience, or like how did you know that you wanted to make him like a college professor?
I think it was just, I didn't know what I wanted exactly. And then after I read there was one book that I read and I was like, okay, like that was definitely some inspiration. So I think I drew some of like the classroom antics from that book.
Yeah. What's like a quintessential student professor scene that you knew that you had to have in there? Like gives you a failing grade and you have to go to office hours, or like, I don't know, you run into them at the coffee shop or something.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a scene where there was a bad grade and she had to go visit him in the classroom.
I mean, hey, you got to use whatever tools you have available.
Yeah.
Were there any scenes that you had a tough time writing?
Oh, I think there were some scenes between Professor Graves and his mom that were a little difficult for me because he had like a sad backstory. I won't touch on it too much because I don't want to spoil it. But there's a sad backstory there with him. And so like conversations with his mom are like deep, and I was getting a little emotional writing them. So
Oh, that's sweet. So they were like emotionally hard to write, like maybe cuts a little too close to the surface.
Yes.
But what about just like, did you ever get like stuck in the writing process? Like I imagine, you know, when you have an idea to write your own book, you have all these fun creative ideas flowing, and then you actually sit, at least this was my experience. Like I always thought, you know, I have a lot of ideas in my head. Maybe someday I could write a book. And I tried to write a thriller and I got like 4 chapters in and I was like, I don't know what to do now. Like this sounded really fun in theory, and now I have no thoughts in my head.
Yeah, I had writer's block near the beginning. I almost talked myself out of doing it, but I was like, this is something you really want to do. Like, who knows where it could go? So why not do it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder how many people out there like get started and they're like, because I'm getting stuck or because this is kind of hard for me right now, like you sort of doubt your ability to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Because it is hard to generate characters that resemble real people that people can latch onto and throw them into a story. And like, even if it's something you know a lot about, like I'm currently a graduate student, so I'd probably, you know, have a lot of ideas about the university system and like, at least from like an instructor's point of view. But like, you would still have to do a lot of research to even just know, I don't know, what ins and outs of his everyday life. Like if you're writing from his perspective, you're like, what the heck does an instructor do? Like outside of their life, or like how does submitting grades work, or what are university policies about dating students?
Yeah, there was a lot of research that went in, especially into his character, because for Arya, I can relate a little bit, and there wasn't as much research, but for him, it was definitely a lot of Googling.
You just wrote mostly about like your own college experience?
I did like online classes, and then things at home. My mom started to get sick, so I had to go to Florida, and
oh wow,
then I stopped. So I didn't actually finish.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, family stuff has to come first. But like even just the experience of like submitting applications, getting into college, enrolling in classes, navigating like syllabi and your schedule, like whether that's in person or online, like that's like a huge feat and a huge part of like moving from high school to college. Like just even figuring out how the heck to do that. Like I was a first generation college student, so like my parents had no idea how the heck to do any of this, and I was like trying to register for classes, and I was like, I don't understand how this works. Is that part of like Arya's, do we get to see that side of her story like prior to coming to college? Like is it like centered around the summer before she starts?
It's we get to know a little bit about, but the story actually starts 2 days before official classes start but she moved into her dorm like the week before. So the night that she goes out and meets him, it's the day before she starts her classes and sees that he is her professor.
Girl is going out in Vegas clubbing like 2 nights before school starts. She is wild.
She is a party girl at heart.
Yeah, no, I could never. Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself, about how you got into writing and how you came to this decision to actually put pen to paper, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely ever since I was younger. I want to say maybe even like second, third grade. English was always my favorite subject. And then I realized in high school that I liked it a little too much. Every time we would have to write an essay on like the most boring thing, I would just go above and beyond. And I was like, I really don't think I need to put this much effort into it, but I love writing. And then, yeah, my brother was doing his thing, writing music, and that was definitely inspiring because writing music, I feel like, is sort of similar to writing a novel because you have to talk about things in detail, and it was like similar. So I was like, okay, maybe I should start writing, like doing some creative writing. So I remember for Christmas one year, they had these, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're like 500 writing prompt books.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So I would get those for like Christmas and birthdays and stuff and just fill them up and have a great time. And then
so it's just like a random prompt and it just says like write a paragraph about a giraffe wearing a cowboy hat or like something weird.
There was one that said, if you were stranded on a deserted island, what would your message in a bottle say? Like, and it's just
that's a good one.
It's so cool, so creative. So those are really fun to do. And then I want to say junior year of high school, we would be assigned like to write in our journal every day. She would write like a deep prompt on the board and we would have to respond to it. And I realized that maybe I had like a little bit of a gift when she would grade the journals and just give us like however many points out of 100 to make sure that we wrote them. And she would make comments on every single one of mine. And I would look at my friends and they theirs didn't have comments. And I was like, okay. And then she pulled me to the side and was like, you're really good with creative writing. I love how descriptive you are.
Oh,
And so that just was like a little bit of an ego boost.
yeah, that's awesome. Because, I mean, definitely, I feel like at that age, you're just kind of like, your self-esteem is basically in the toilet when you're a young teenager. So you're just like, this is garbage. Nobody will want to read this. Do you have any of those still?
I did like 2 years ago. I found one, and then I lost it again.
But you were writing probably like, I don't know, what kind of assignments do they give you in high school? It's probably just like, I don't know, very G-rated
Like,
fun stories, I'm guessing. So like,
yeah.
how did you go from like writing about a message you would put in a bottle if you were on a desert island to writing a professor student?
I just like writing things that like require a lot of emotional thinking
Yeah.
and like creative thinking. So that I just have a lot more fun writing. I used to write like short stories, and this is embarrassing, but fan fiction on Wattpad. I had I think like 2 fan fictions about One Direction.
That's cool. The
Yeah.
only okay, if we're gonna get nerdy for a minute, I think the only fan fiction that I've like actually thought I would be super interested in reading is the like, what's his name, Draco Malfoy, like the Harry Potter stuff. I had a friend who
Oh,
told me
yes.
about that, and I was like, I feel like I would be interested in reading that. Like the stories that no one else is going to tell you, and I feel like those are the fun things to stumble upon. One Direction, that's good. Was it mostly about Harry or like the whole band?
I had a thing for Niall at the time.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
there was a lot related to Niall.
Mm-hmm. So that was kind of like your first like practicing of writing like romance type literature.
Yeah, and definitely with like more spicy scenes. I
Mhm.
didn't know how to write them properly then, but
All right. Well, Kay, I'm so happy that you said that, because this is a question I have been wanting to ask, which is like, how? Like, how can you write a scene like that? Like, are you just sitting kind of like giggling to yourself as you're typing and you're like, I'm cringe, like I'm so embarrassed by myself right now? Or is it just kind of like it just flows out really easy and you're like, either this, like, I've seen this in a movie, or it's playing out like in a movie in my head, super easy to write out, or like, I don't know. I feel like I would just be like giggling, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just wrote that.
I think for me it was like you said, like a movie playing out in my head or something. Like I would write like a line or two and then just like close my eyes and be like, okay, how would this go? Like, or if it were me, what would I want to happen? So I think that was the inspiration for the spicy scenes.
Yeah. So what did you mean when you said that? Like at first you didn't know how to write them?
I was just so like non-descriptive and just like straight to the point. I think when I was a teenager and writing fan fiction, but now I know how to like let it flow a little bit more and drag it out longer.
Yeah, I think drag it out longer. That's funny. You're like, I need some foreplay here.
Yeah.
I think as like one of my things is being an editor is that I'm very much so a visual of like the things that are playing out. And so oftentimes in my head, I'm kind of like, okay, well, I thought I had pictured the hands are here and now they're here. How did that happen? Or like, well, I thought you were sitting here, but now you're standing over there. How did you get over there? And so it feels like I'm more of like, I care more actually about the logistics of how this is happening. I really am interested in these technical details, and I need you to fill in these spaces or this image is just falling apart. Do you have an author's best friend? Do you have like an editor or somebody who does like proofreading, or do you trust anyone to to read those types of books that you've written?
I have probably 2 people. My actual best friend, who she's not like an editor or anything, but I like the roughest draft that I had, like the outline, I had her read and she was like, oh wow, like I'm into this. And then I showed her sister, who is not a reader at all. And like I was expecting her to just be like, I don't even want to read it. Like, but she called me the next day. It's like, I loved it. I said, like, I just felt really accomplished because she hates reading. And I also have a PA, and she's just been a great help.
Yeah. So like, what kind of feedback do you get from her?
I have her, and then I have like a separate editor and like a proofreader. So I don't think my PA has like read any of it outside of like quotes on Instagram and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But I'm gonna give her an arc. So
I see. Okay. And so, yeah, so we're recording this and it'll be out in like a little over a month. So what stage are you at right now? Like the book is it done?
yeah, we're in like final editing, and arcs are also going out in like the next couple weeks, which I'm really nervous but excited for.
It's exciting. That's really Are you going to read your reviews, like all of them as they come in?
Oh yeah. Like even and I had beta readers,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh yeah.
I was just like so shocked by the response because I mean, I knew it wasn't a horrible book, but I guess when it's your own writing, you're like, oh, like I think people are gonna hate it. Like, what are they gonna say?
Yeah, self-esteem is still in the toilet.
Yeah, the reviews were like so good. Some people were so sweet. I had like a couple people, like a couple people critiqued it, which obviously that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
But it was nothing bad, and I was just like so blown away at like how people responded to it.
Mm-hmm. That's so sweet. Was anyone like quoting anything or saying anything about scenes that you were like, I didn't even know you take it like that?
I had one beta reader who she would like give a play-by-play for like each chapter. It was just the best thing ever.
Wow, that's amazing. And that was like your first experience getting feedback on the book outside of your own best friend?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, then maybe, I don't know. That's hard. I feel like beta readers have this sense of like, they're kind of a part of the process, you know? Whereas ARC readers are maybe more of like, I got this book early and I'm gonna read it, and they just don't necessarily have they're just gonna give you their unfiltered opinion because they just got this book. Whereas beta readers are like, I'm trying to help you catch typos and like find things that are maybe like plot holes, or like, you know, I'm a part of this process with you because this book is still like in the earlier stages. Whereas ARC readers are just like, here, you read it and tell me your thoughts. And so those can get like a little unhinged sometimes. But like, how did you filter for who was gonna, like, do they have to like age gaps to be an ARC reader, or?
Yeah, so I definitely I still have the form up, so I still have people responding, but I put in one of the questions in the form was, do you like taboo age gap romance? Because I don't want to, you know, give an ARC to somebody if that's like not their thing. Yeah. I feel like they just wouldn't like it.
Yeah, then you're going to get feedback of just like, ew, he's so much older than her. Like, this isn't cute. And you're like, but that's the trope.
That's the point.
That's the point of the book. Okay, so you started with your One Direction fan fiction, and then how did you get to like Yes, Professor is the name of the book. We have Professor Graves and we have Arya, and this is the story I'm going to start writing.
A lot of just planning things out, playing with things. So the second book that I'm going to release, which is another standalone, is I was. Oh,
you're already working on something?
Yeah.
Exciting.
That one's going to be my first release because it's more like open to everyone, I guess. Like the trope more people like. So, but I just went with my gut and decided I like taboo. That's what I want to release.
Heck yeah. Send it.
But it was definitely a lot of planning out.
What do you use to like plan out your books? Like, you just like type it out in a Word document, or are you writing in a journal, or?
I have, oh God, I do so much things. So I had, when I did the character profiles, I had boards on Pinterest. I made like slides with like their pictures, personality traits, things like that. And then I have a Word document, and I write in a notepad, and I write notes on my phone, because sometimes I'll be sleeping and have a dream or something that is a great idea for the book. So I have to wake up and just get my phone, write it down. I just don't want to forget it.
Yeah, I feel like you sort of need to have a bunch of different modalities for tracking that, because it's like you could be in the grocery store and you're like, oh gosh, I got to write this down. This is a great idea. Or you're like away from your computer or something. So so you're not the first person who said that they use slides, which I think is super interesting. Do you just put like your main characters in there, or do you have like the university aesthetic and quintessential scene aesthetic and side characters, or like what isn't detailed in all of your slides?
Yes. So I do have the main characters, and then also side characters, And like you said, like settings, places in the book, I have like picture aesthetics for that and like pinpoint some things down about the places.
And then is it sort of like a roadmap of where the book will go, or is that something separate to know like this scene should come first, and then I want to put this scene somewhere in the middle, and then like here's how I want it to end, or like how do you plan out how the story will progress?
That was in I had a Word document for that too. Like I would write when I was first planning out, I had I wrote I want to say the first chapter of how I wanted it to start. And then just where I wanted it to go from there. And then like every day I would come into that document and just write more. And I would put like numbered bullet point, like this is gonna happen and then this is gonna happen. You're gonna mess it up.
And did you end up moving things around? Like, did you do that early on? And then did you end up moving any things around?
I did. I moved a couple things around because the way that the book started, it was okay at like for the first draft. And then I had an idea, which I should have done for the first draft. But so I definitely switched those two things around and put that before the other things.
Yeah. So was this your first time planning a book out like this, or did you do that with the other book that you had thought would be your first release?
I did that with the other one too.
Oh, okay. Was it just like I'm just going to go for it, and this is how I think the best way to plan out this book would be? Or did you have anyone that like gave you tips, or like how did you find out what worked best for you?
I had so when I first had my Instagram, like the author one, it was a Bookstagram account. And then I just had the idea to, write my first novel. And I had some people who I communicated with like through the Bookstagram before I turned it into an author Instagram. And they were writing books of their own. So we kind of like bounced ideas off of each other, which was really nice because they had already released some books, some novellas and things like that. So yeah, people definitely helped out with beginning things.
Yeah, you definitely shouldn't do it in a vacuum. Like people have so many tips and tricks, and like there are a lot of just like really silly little hoops that you have to jump through just to get your book available. And it's so nice when somebody can just
so much to learn.
Yeah, for sure. So you did like a rebrand in February. What was your motivation for that?
So it was honestly, I did before when I first started the author Instagram, I didn't even know like what Canva was or anything. And then I got Canva one day and I was like, oh my God, like I can do so much on here. So I found like a logo and I rearranged some things and I was like, yeah, this is me. This is the brand. This is what we're going with.
Yeah, Canva's a life changer.
It's great.
Canva's big. I'm doing like a bunch of like wedding planning things right now. And so many people are like, oh yeah, have you used Etsy? Like Etsy's really great. You can buy templates for stuff and then they can just like print them for you and whatever. And I was like, I'm too type A for that. Everything I've done is in Canva and it's all mine, baby. So, okay. So your book comes out May 20th. Do you have any plans, like any fun plans for your book release?
It's also my best friend's birthday the same day. So I would love to be with her, but we moved away from each other. So she's like roughly 5 hours away. So I don't know if we'll be able to be together, but I was thinking maybe I could get like a cake made and then FaceTime her, have cake together on the phone or something like that.
That would be cute. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Did you ask her if you could borrow her birthday?
I did.
What about May 20th like spoke to you?
I don't know. I think honestly, just because it was her birthday and we're just so close and like I was bouncing the ideas of the book off of her. So it was just important to include her in somewhere.
That's sweet. So did you pick like May 20th a while ago and then work backwards, or had you already started writing and then you're like, okay, I got to give myself a deadline?
I was writing for, I want to say 2.5, maybe 3 months. And then I was like, okay, let's get a deadline. So that's.
And then at what point was that? Like, how long did you give yourself?
I want to say after that, I gave myself 7 months, I want to say.
That's pretty good. I feel like a year of like start writing all the way to getting the book published is like maybe sort of typical.
Yeah.
I ask about the birthday thing because Sierra texted me a couple weeks ago and was like, Like, how would you feel? She's writing a hockey romance called Model Behavior that comes out June 22nd. And she was like, how would you feel about a June 22nd release? And that's my birthday. And I was like, oh, heck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's what the secret is like picking dates that are like already meaningful to you in some way. That's super cute. And okay, and so you're already working on another book, but like how far did you get into that one before you decided to switch gears?
It wasn't too terribly far. I want to say like maybe like 4 chapters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you've already picked that back up again?
Mhm.
And how far into that writing process are you?
Not very far. I'm like 15 chapters.
15 chapters. Okay. And
Yeah.
it's completely switching gears. Like it's not in the same, you said it's a standalone.
Yeah, it's very different from Yes Professor. It's just like fluffy and cute and like a vacation romance. It's really cute.
Oh, cute. Fluffy. So is Yes Professor painful? Like are we gonna be hurting?
There are a couple, not a lot, but a couple like ouch moments that might hit you.
Oh. I always think it's so fun with debut novel authors because you have no idea what to expect. Like you know, people with a couple books out, you're like, oh yeah, they're a big fan of a third act breakup, or they're a big fan of like sprinkling in just a little bit of like, you know, family drama or whatever. And so with you, you're just like a blank slate for your readers. Like they have no idea what to expect. Do you have like other ideas floating around, like books or tropes that you're dying to write?
I really want to write Enemies to Lovers, and I have plans for that book as well. So that's in the works. I'm very excited for that. That's my favorite trope.
Well, yeah. Enemies to Lovers is a good one. I love the angst. I'm a huge fan of the angst.
Yeah.
I feel like Friends to Lovers is always kind of sad. Like, at least with Enemies to Lovers, it's like, we're going to gamble on this. And if it doesn't work out, we'll just go back to hating each other like we did before. But Friends to Lovers is like, well, if it doesn't work out, our friendship's over. And that's just way riskier and way more depressing. And I feel like by nature, Enemies to Lovers has to have, I guess it could be grumpy, but at least has to have somebody is grumpy and somebody is maybe sunshine. But I also feel like that's fun because if you're going to be enemies, you usually have a male main character that's just grumpy and surly all the time. And I eat that up like catnip.
Me too.
Are we ever going to see your One Direction work come to life? Maybe we get a grumpy Harry Styles. Does Harry Styles have any enemies? Oh, no, Neil. You said Neil.
Yes, that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, you could flip that into Enemies to Lovers.
Yeah.
That would be fun, possibly, to go back to your old work. Unless you're reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, what was I doing?
Yeah, it was a little cringy to look back on.
That's so funny. I meant to ask you earlier, what kind of music does your brother write?
So it's rap, but it's like meaningful rap, if that makes sense. Like his lyrics mean something. It's just not about like typical rap song things.
I don't know if you'd call it like old school rap, you know, like Tupac songs, like their Tupac raps. Like it's like Eminem. It's like telling a story of like hardships or, you know, whatever. Well, that's cool. Does he like perform those for you and like your family?
Well, he like makes some. He would go when we lived in Florida. I remember I went to a studio with him once. It was such a weird experience, but it was so fun.
That's awesome.
And the guy, like, he offered to order us pizza and everything. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, what did I get myself into? But no, it was a fun experience, like seeing him in his element and just like on the microphone. It was fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. So do they like read their lyrics while they're in the studio, or is it mostly just like going based off, like, I don't know, maybe rap doesn't sound as good if it's like you're reading from it?
He was reading like from his notes on his phone or something, but it just flowed so well. I would myself would not be able to do that. I would probably stutter if I was. It would be hard for me.
When he was first starting out and writing them, did he like perform them for you guys?
Yeah, he would like run lyrics by the family sometimes, especially I think my mom mostly was like a lot of inspiration for him. And then I might get sad here for a second, so I'm sorry. But she passed away 2 years ago. And he also like wrote about that too. So yeah.
That's sweet. Well, I'm sorry to hear that about your mom.
Thank you.
She can live through your brother's music. That's very cool.
Yeah. She was also like inspiration for writing as well,
Mm-hmm.
because she started to write a book like before she got sick, or no, after she found out she got sick. I'm sorry, because it was gonna be like I don't know what you would call it, a memoir,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, because she was like, this is gonna be good, like I'm gonna be a bestseller, and I was like, okay, you go, girl. And then
You go, Mom. So your mom is where you got your guys' like creative abilities.
yeah, and I hope that I can like, by pursuing that dream for myself, I hope that like I can do it for her at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I bet Mom would be proud. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So where can people get a copy of Yes, Professor when it comes out?
So it will be on Amazon, Kindle, and
Mm-hmm.
free on Kindle Unlimited if you have a subscription. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm also gonna do like signed copies on my website.
Heck yeah.
So yeah,
What's your website URL?
author kayceleste.com. But it's not. We're in the final stages of getting it ready.
Mhm.
Within the next week, I think we'll be ready to launch.
Awesome. Okay. So Amazon, Kindle Unlimited, and then they could go to your website and get some signed copies. And then on social media, you're on Instagram. And are you on other platforms as well?
I have a TikTok, but I've been trying so hard to get something to blow up on there. It's a lot harder than it is on Instagram. So I do have a TikTok, and I'm on Goodreads as well as an author.
That's one of the things that I've been thinking about. Like, as I meet with more authors, my wheels are kind of turning about, ways in which we can get authors together just to kind of like demystify some things for people. And like, I have no room to speak because I'm 100 years old when it comes to social media. But like that, I feel like is a hard thing to nail down. Like how that I've made a video that is exactly has the trending sound and everything there. It has the animations. It should be doing well, and it isn't. Like, what do people want?
Yeah. It's just so hard to figure out the algorithm.
Yeah, I also feel like it's an app meant for like very fast scrolling. It's like if you don't have something engaging within like the first 1.5 seconds.
Yeah.
But like, I don't have TikTok, but I get all that I need to know from like friends who send me videos. But then sometimes people will send me stuff and it takes like a minute before it like actually gets good. And I'm like, how did you sit and watch this for a minute before you figured out that it was worth watching?
And those videos are like viral all the time.
It's just vibes over there. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just vibes. Well, I'm personally very excited for in a month to read Yes, Professor. Thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing about your journey to authoring and your journey through writing this book. I wish you the best of luck with your release. Hopefully you and your best friend can find something to do to commemorate the day. It's been a blast, and I look forward to talking with you next time.
Thank you. It was so nice of you having me.